to this session on changing LodeStar's appearance. Today, we'll talk about layouts, themes, palettes, and that'll help us really get a look that we're seeking. So if we currently preview this project on giving and receiving feedback, we see the vanilla daylight layout. We can see the layout, and we also get the default daylight theme. So that's what's responsible for, the colors, the header, the footer, and so forth. So that the layout is here. We can see for example, the width of this content is dictated by layout. The fact that we're seeing white in the footer and the header, and the page color is all related to theme. And down below we have some resources. We went back to LodeStar. A resource is simply a page. So here we have a page that's titled Feedback Tips, and it's been removed from the flow. Resources has been checked. So therefore, this page of content comes up when the learner needs it. So if I preview it again, you would see that we would have a tab below that matches the page ID. We click on that and we get feedback tips. That's important for us. It's important for me to recognize these tabs because various layouts affect these tabs differently. So let's get started with, let's change layout. Let's start with that. I'll go back to my first page here. I'll select Tools, Layouts, and I'll do a full screen layout. Let's see its effect. I'll preview. So I'll make a change. I'll preview so that we can see the effect of the change. Here you can see we still kind of have the vanilla appearance, but now our screen is so much wider. It's making full use of the screen real estate. Next, we'll add a background to our layout. So backgrounds are associated with layouts. If you change layout, you lose your background. Choose Get Image. I'll select this background and preview. Here's our background, and in front of that, so cut out here, you can see that this is opaque. None of the background is showing through. We'll change that. Incidentally, just to show you another layout, we'll lose our background, but for example, if I chose case study, let's see the effect on our resources with this layout. You'll notice immediately that we've lost our background because, again, that's associated with layout. Let's take a look and see what we have. Now what we have is still the kind of the vanilla look, but our resources are arrayed on the right side. And that can be very, very useful in, for example, case studies. You would have a full column of resources that you can apply to the case study. And that's the purpose of that layout. I'll choose another dramatically different layout, and that is free fall. So free fall, until now, you've kind of seen the content inside a frame. The frame varies in width depending on the layout. Well, this causes the frame completely to disappear. And so now we're able to, we're able to scroll. So this is more like a kind of rise layout, if you will. No framing at all. There's quite a variety of layouts here. Let's go back to our full screen. And we'll preview. Okay, there we are. I'll return to layout and grab my background. You want to clear the background, you can always do this, clear image. See what we get. Okay. Now we'll move over to themes. I can change themes. So I could choose any one of these themes, which is associated with a different set of colors, or I can simply take my current theme and make changes. For example, the first color that you see, the HTML background, can be changed, but of course we have a full image in our background, so we would never notice this after a couple seconds. To kind of illustrate that, maybe I'll change this to black, and you'll notice that when we first start, there'll be a black screen, and then very quickly we'll see our background graphic. We may not see the black screen at all. Our inner background color relates to our page color. And here I'd like a little transparency, and I want to change it from the default of white. So let's click on this. I'll choose custom color. I can simply, I could choose a color this way. And if I go to the web, you can see the effect. Or if I have a specific color value, I could go ahead and type that in, and I do. I have a very specific value here. So I'll talk about these components. So the E5 is the red component. The F0 is the green component. The FB is the blue component. So these are RGB. So the first two digits relates to the red, second two to the green, and the last two relate to blue. But I also want a certain transparency. I'll go ahead and add a transparency. I'll make this about Oh, I don't know. We'll try 47%. So I want a little bleed through. I want the graphic to bleed through the page a little bit. That might be too much. Let me think about this for a second. Well, I'll go with it. So here again, I have my red component, my green component, my blue component, and the level of transparency. Let's see what happens. We should see the background graphic bleed just a bit. And you can see that. So we don't get this stark difference. We might want to ratchet that back up a little. We could make that a little more opaque. This might be a little too much, but at least it illustrates the point. So here we've lost our contrast. So yeah, we definitely want to make this a little more opaque. But we've illustrated our point. To change that, I could simply go to Tools and Themes. I would click here, choose Custom Color, and let's just bring that up a little bit. See what we get. This might get a little tedious, my constantly previewing, but I do want you to see, the kind of the effect of the change. And it's conflicting a little bit, but you can adjust for that. Before I continue, well, I do want to change. This is rather plain. I do want to change that up a little bit. I've prepared a page that I think will be a little more interesting. We used an SVG graphic. So I'll cut this page and put it up front. There we go. And I'll take this page and I'll delete it. So I think what I've done here is, rather than use the basic heading 1, I created an SVG graphic. So I simply use the text tool here to create this line and then this line, and then I used the image tool to bring in the logo. And that works much nicer. I can change the size of this. I think you get a little more punch when you use an SVG graphic for the title rather than just simply a heading. So there we go. Yeah, and for sure, I have a lot of conflict here. I probably need to dial back the transparency even more. Oops. We'll go to Themes. Click on this little button, click on Custom Color. We want to go to the web. And let's bring that to 81. I won't bother previewing that. We'll see that soon enough. The next thing I want to do with themes, So I want to go into advanced to change the header. Right now we had a plain white header, and what I'm referring to is the very top of the frame. So I'll choose Tools, Themes. I'll go to Advanced. So our header is white. And what I would like is this. I would like this color here. So what you need to do is select one of these plates, click on color, click on custom color, and then I'll go ahead and type in the value that I do want. And that value is F0 for the red, 6.1 for green, and 5.2 for the blue component. And that's about right. That's what I'm looking for. I'll go ahead and copy this. I'll click on Use. So now I've changed this plate, and you can see that the point, that the reason why we're doing this in 3 stages is because if you seek a gradient, you can gradually go from orange to white, as you can see here. You have a lot of control over that, but I don't want that. That is, you don't tend to see gradations. You tend not to see kind of beveled headings anymore. They're essentially flat colors. That flat is in, the beveled look is out for the time being. So now we've changed the second plate, and we're going to change the last plate. Go to Web. So we're just seeking a flat orange color. I'll hit OK. I'm not going to bother changing the footer. So I've made 2 changes. I've changed the transparency and I've changed the header color. Let's see what we get. If you change your layout, you do not lose your theme. So here I'm looking for that, and that looks good. And you can see we've affected our transparency, so we don't have as much of a clash, but you can keep fine-tuning that. And we have a transparent page. The last thing I want to change is this color. So this is a simple sim page. You know, we're given a situation and we've got to make a choice. And of course, we can consult our feedback tips, and we can consult Rita's file as we're making the choice. But I think this is a little too dark. I kind of want to lighten that. These colors are controlled by the palette. Now, these types of pages, so these are text pages, we can control the color of the text page through our theme, and we can also override colors here. We can select the image tool, and we can change. I could change a page color here. I'll just to demonstrate. I could do something like that. But pages that are form-based pages, multiple choice, multiple select, the various page types, and what I'm referring to is the page type here. So Challenger, flashcards, interactive image, many of these pages that are not text pages are governed by the palette. So the palette, I select Tools, Palettes. I'll just change. I'll make a radical change here. I'll select blue. And that form-based page, the simple sim, will now be affected by that blue palette. So let's take a look at that. This isn't ultimately what I want to achieve, but you can see now, instead of that darker black gray combination, I now have this blue combination. Let me revert back to what we had originally. So I'll go to palettes, I'll go to daylight. And what I'll do now is change the chip. So a lot of, let's go back to blue. A lot of these, you can see there are 5 chips here. There's this, and then these 4 chips. And typically, like with multiple choice questions, that's governed by, so you can see here, used for input. This is the color that's used for input fields, color used for feedback pop-ups, distractors. So in a multiple choice question, the distractor, the background color of the distractor is this chip right here. So we have these chips or tiles, whatever you want to call them, but we call them chips. And their values can be overridden. So if I went back to daylight, I could kind of ratchet this back a little bit so there's a little more transparency. So I'll hit OK. So I've changed that darkest chip, and the darkest chip is what's used. Darkest chip is what is used in the simple sim. So now this is a little bit lighter, a little easier. And I could even, create a tone that's more complementary of the background. So to quickly review, layouts affect the height and width of our frame or remove the frame entirely. Layouts are also associated with the background image. Themes control colors, including here you can see a header and a footer. So this theme, if I chose this theme, I would likely have a blue header and a blue footer. You can see that. In our daylight, it was simply white. Also, we can control our background color. We can control table of contents color and the page color, the inner color. And we have to both change the color and ensure that show inner color is checked off here. In order to control the header, here you can see we have a beveled look. If to control the header, we go into advanced and we change these plates. To control the footer, we do the same. Notice the navigator. The navigator is wherever the buttons, the forward and backward buttons are. In some layouts, the navigator is actually on top. So the header, it's not always that the header's on top and the footer is at the bottom. In some layouts, the header and the footer are combined and they're both on top. But to change the footer color, you would choose these plates. And then finally, we have our palettes. And the default palette is daylight, but we can change our palette of colors. And again, so when we have certain page types that have page panels, this is the page panel color. And then we just use our tooltip, input fields, pop-ups, distractors, and tiles. Color used for form headers and unselected content buttons. And then finally, this last chip, selected content buttons, and as we saw, the simple sim, the question stem and the distractors for the simple sim. Well, that concludes our tour of appearances. One last point is all of these characters are available here in our character manager. And to acquire more characters, you can choose download more characters. So this always updates your system with what exists up in the cloud. So you won't get, if we haven't added any more characters, you won't get anything. Right now you can see that we have Diallo business casual, Helena business casual, James business casual, and then Lalo business casual. So this is a starter character pack. Out of the box, LodeStar comes only with Helena business. So if you want to see these other characters, download more characters. Thanks so much for watching.